Billionaire discovers his old friend serving tables. What happens next is incredibly transformati. Jake Carter stepped into the diner, the familiar clang of silverware a stunning reminder of his past. The aroma of fresh coffee and pancakes wrapped around him like an old, comforting sweater. But his heart sank as he turned to see Sam, his childhood best friend, clad in a stained apron and exuding a weary smile. The contrast jolted Jake, crushing the air from his lungs. How had they come to this? He, a self-made billionaire, and Sam became a server, surrounded by grease-slicked booths. For the first time, Jake's wealth felt less like a badge of honor and more like a weight. Sam welcomed him with the warmth of a long-lost brother, yet the joy was shadowed by an unspoken truth. They shared laughs over burgers, memories of reckless youth tangled with painful realities. Sam's sacrifices towered over Jake's achievements, bills for his mother's care, his son's college looming like an insurmountable mountain. Jake could sense how tired and broken Sam was. His calloused hands, the physical remnants of dreams deferred. With each bite of their burgers, the sharpness of guilt and regret gnawed at Jake's insides. He hesitated, wrestling with a desire that felt as foreign as it was familiar. Did he dare to offer financial help, believing it could rescue Sam from this suffocating numbness? Conflicted feelings churned within him. Would this gesture be a lifeline or a shackle? The tension in the air simmered, thick and palpable, as he battled with visions of Sam's face, twisted in anger or embarrassment, the friendship crumbling beneath the weight of charity. "Man, you've got it all now," Sam said, his weary smile faltering. "Must be nice." The words hung heavy, their sharpness cutting deeper than Jake expected. He fought the urge to defend himself, to explain that wealth brought its own chains, that loneliness wasn't exclusive to poverty, but the weight of Sam's unfiltered honesty silenced him. "Sometimes I wish I could cook, you know," Sam confessed, revealing a flicker of passion buried beneath layers of duty. "Used to love it, but life got in the way." The flicker spread, igniting ideas in Jake's mind. A pop-up restaurant. They could collaborate, share their worlds anew. He felt hope blooming as they began to sketch plans, culinary dreams that made Sam's eyes shine. But just as excitement brewed, uncertainty crept in. The oppressive weight of regulations loomed larger, threatening to crush Sam's dreams before they even took shape. Jake's heart raced. Would he step into the fray alongside his old friend, risking everything he had built? A nagging question clawed at him. Was he ready to abandon the comfort of his corporate fortress to champion a cause that mirrored their intertwined histories? Each heartbeat felt like a countdown, teetering on a precipice between loyalty and ambition. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Jake's hands trembled as his phone buzzed, a warning from a struggling rival. A threat, cloaked in corporate politeness, suggesting that their endeavor would stir unwanted attention. His breath hitched, the stakes transformed into a personal entanglement. Was this risk worth it? The question loomed heavy, gnawing at him, as he caught Sam's gaze, immediate and piercing. They stood on the brink, grappling with the uncertain shadows of their histories, the decision not merely about a restaurant, but a defining moment for their lives and their shared futures. The pause stretched between them like a taut string, heavy with unspoken words and unfinished dreams. Jake's mind raced, each tick of the clock amplifying the urgency of their moment. He studied Sam's face, tracing the lines of exhaustion etched around his eyes, each one a testament to a battle fought silently, day after day. Could he really ask Sam to leap into the unknown with him? Their shared laughter over burgers felt minor against the daunting challenge ahead. "You know, I've always respected you, Jake," Sam finally said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. "But let's be real. What are we talking about here? A pop-up restaurant? That's big. And it's not just about dreams. It's about resources and time." The weight of practicality pressed on Jake's chest, forcing him to confront the gaping chasm between aspiration and reality. Sam's resistance illuminated a fear Jake hadn't dared to acknowledge. What if they failed? Would the fissures in their friendship widen into unbridgeable chasms? "I can help with the costs," Jake replied, his voice barely above a whisper, as though saying it out loud could summon a storm. "I'm not looking for a handout, Jake." Sam's eyes hardened, a defensive wall rising. "What if it goes under? Will our friendship survive that?" The truth stung. The foundation of their lifelong bond was at stake, an experiment fraught with peril. Yet Jake sensed something deeper, a flicker of hope behind Sam's eyes, fighting to push its way through the frustration and anger. "What if it doesn't?" Jake countered, his voice gaining momentum. "What if this is our shot at something more?" A silence enveloped them, suffocating yet electric. In that split second, Jake realized the venture wasn't solely about opening a restaurant. This was about rediscovering a part of themselves long buried beneath the weight of adulthood. "You love cooking, Sam. You're passionate about it. Isn't that worth pursuing, regardless of the risks?" With every breath, Jake felt the urgency building inside him. It was no longer just about financial returns or media scrutiny. It was about reclaiming joy, purpose, and friendship. Sam's hands shook slightly as he ran fingers through his hair, seemingly battling himself. The diner's bustling surroundings blurred into the background, fading into insignificance compared to the storm rippling through their shared history. They had spent years in different worlds, yet here they were, at a crossroads that could reshape everything. "I don't know, man," Sam sighed, the fight leaving his voice like air escaping a deflated balloon. "I like the idea, but so many things could go wrong." "Things always go wrong," Jake's voice firmed up, filled with his pent-up determination. "But we've faced worse. Remember when we tried to build that treehouse? It fell down multiple times, but we built it again. We have to stop letting fear hold us back." Sam searched Jake's eyes, realizing the depths of his friend's sincerity. There was something magnetic about the idea, a potential rebirth of both their lives. What if Jake's immense experience in business could partner with Sam's love for food? Just the thought ignited a spark deep within him. "Okay," Sam reluctantly agreed after a pause, uncertainty clouding his expression. "But we'll have to go all in. No half measures. If we're doing this, we're really doing this." As the words hung in the air, an exhilarating rush filled Jake. They had both taken the first step into the unknown, a fusion of friendship and ambition that reignited their spirits. But the gnawing doubt wasn't finished with him. As he returned home that evening, shadows flanked his path. Risks painted vivid images of failure, threats from the corporate realm warning him about crossing lines. The thought that the rival's warning might not be just an empty threat unsettled him. He lay awake that night, replaying that conversation, grappling with the emotional weight of choosing loyalty over personal ambition. Jake's journey was just beginning, filled with potential dreams and looming dread. In that restless state, he made a decision. If they were going to dive into this unknown together, he would face whatever came their way. He would forge ahead into the burning brightness of opportunity, keeping Sam close. Yet, as exhaustion clouded his mind, a single chilling thought echoed ominously. What would happen when the world of business came knocking at their door? Jake lay there, the darkness heavy with unanswered questions, the next phase of their partnership already beckoning. Little did he know, a true test of his resolve wasn't just around the corner. It was breaching the horizon. Jake awoke to the harsh rays of morning light slicing through the curtains, illuminating the remnants of a restless night. The surreal weight of his conversation with Sam hung over him like a dense fog, clouding his thoughts. They had begun this journey, but the path was laden with hallucinatory doubts. The sheer magnitude of their undertaking loomed large, threatening to envelop them before they even began. Determined to seize the day, he rushed through his morning routine, but the frenzy couldn't stifle the gnawing uncertainty that churned within him. What if his ambition overwhelmed their friendship? What if their dreams shattered against the jagged rocks of reality? His phone buzzed to life as he stepped onto the street, Sam's name flashing on the screen. The pit in his stomach tightened as he answered. "Hey!" Sam's voice held a mix of nerves and excitement. "I've been thinking about our plan. We should start at the ground level, draft some ideas. I'm talking menus and concepts." The electrical current of Sam's enthusiasm ignited something deep in Jake. He felt a surge of validation, a rekindling of the fire that had been doused in years of corporate monotony. "Let's meet at Cruz Cafe. We can brainstorm and sketch out a game plan." As he navigated the crowded streets, Jake found himself vibrating with a sense of purpose. The realization began to dawn on him. The stakes were high, yes, but the potential for growth, for both of them, was infinite. He had always shied away from risk, but this was different. This wasn't merely an escapade. It was a chance at redefining who he was, both as an individual and a friend. Jake arrived before Sam, utilizing the time to observe the bustling cafe. So many people were engaged in their own moments of joy, savoring each bite of food, immersed in laughter. A voice inside him whispered that he could contribute to that joy through their restaurant concept. His strategic mind could build a foundation for Sam's culinary passion. When Sam walked through the door, there was a palpable shift in the atmosphere. The weariness that once clouded his features seemed replaced with a glimmer of resolve. They sat down with pens, notepads, and a hunger for something greater than anything they had experienced before. Hours passed as they outlined their vision, a modern pop-up restaurant blending unorthodox dishes with a laid-back vibe. The creative synergy cracked the shell of doubt around them, allowing ideas to flow freely. With every stroke of the pen, Jake found himself mesmerized by the potential of what they could create together. Sam's excitement was infectious, prompting Jake to push his own boundaries and foster ideas he had buried under years of conservative business tactics. Suddenly, a flicker of inspiration seized him. What if we incorporate local art into the restaurant? Community artists could showcase their work. It'll turn the space into a dynamic environment and create a conversation. As he spoke, Sam leaned back, an impressed smile spreading across his face. "That's brilliant. I love it." A tangible current of energy coursed between them, binding their ambitions and fueling each other's creativity. But just as Jake felt elated, a dark thought crept in. The risks and pressures that came with starting anew intensified. What if they overreached? What if the commitment altered the balance of their friendship forever? The unresolved questions began to build like a tempest in his mind. Jake tried to push these doubts aside, but they loomed large. As they finalized their draft, he realized he didn't just have to believe in the concept. They would have to believe in each other. When they finally rose from the table, triumph rippling through their bodies, he understood they hadn't just sketched out a restaurant plan. They had forged a pact, sending out a pulse of intention into the universe. But the reality of what lied ahead loomed like an unwelcome spectre, and in that moment of triumph, Jake sensed the shadow shifting. Who would they become in the face of adversity? Would their partnership withstand the pressures, or would it fray under the weight of expectations? As they stepped out into the vibrant world, Jake felt an electric jolt of uncertainty mingle with excitement. Everything was poised on the verge of change, and yet hidden deep within that change was an ominous truth. What if their ambitions would reveal more than either of them could bear? The answer was nearer than he could ever imagine. Jake spent the next few days oscillating between bursts of enthusiasm for their emerging concept and waves of uncertainty about what it would entail. As each hour ticked by, the excitement of creation coiled tightly in his chest, energizing him in ways he hadn't felt in years. Yet lurking beneath was the gnawing terror of the unknown. Encouraged by their brainstorming session, Sam had gone ahead and scheduled meetings with vendors and artists, eager to fill the culinary canvas they were about to create. Jake, split between supporting his friend and grappling with his precarious emotions, threw himself into research. Yet his mind often wandered to those brutal questions, swirling like autumn leaves caught in a gust. What if he failed? What if he let Sam down? As they gathered for their next session at Cruz Cafe, a now familiar escape spot, Jake observed Sam animatedly discussing potential menu items with the barista. Sam radiated passion, an intensity that sparked something dormant within Jake. His heart swelled with pride for Sam's courage, but simultaneously a bitter shade of jealousy crept in. Why couldn't he channel that same confidence? Resolute to push through his wavering self-belief, Jake decided to voice some ideas he had been keeping at bay. You know, we've been focused on the food, but the experience is crucial. What if we themed each week around different cultures? It'll not only keep things fresh, but also invite more people. Sam paused, sipping his coffee, the wheels visibly turning in his head. That's a game changer. We could do food events and music weeks. The community could have a cultural night while appreciating local art. As they brainstormed further, a new sense of clarity began to crystallize in Jake. There was a world of purpose unfolding before him, one that required both of them to be unguarded and daring. In that moment, he could feel the incremental fracturing of his previous limits. The drive to elevate himself alongside Sam ignited a fire he couldn't ignore. However, despite the growing excitement, a deeper, unsettling notion emerged. Sam had always been the creative force, and Jake's rationale helped structure their dreams. But what if Sam's inspiration outpaced Jake's capability to manage? What if the passion he admired in Sam only compounded his own insecurities? After their session, he felt restless and withdrew to a nearby park for reflection. Surrounded by the vibrant autumn foliage, he pondered the reality of their venture. The stakes weren't just business-related, but deeply personal. He couldn't keep suppressing the fear that if he faltered, it might jeopardize not just the business, but their friendship as well. Determined to confront his fears, Jake called Sam that evening. He knew he needed to express his anxieties, though talking about such vulnerabilities felt daunting. Sam, can we meet again to discuss not just our plans, but what they really mean? I've been feeling overwhelmed about all of this. I thought we were in this together, Sam replied, a trace of concern lacing his voice. You're feeling pressure, aren't you? Jake took a deep breath, feeling the weight of vulnerability. It was time to lay bare his fears and insecurities. I want this to work, but part of me worries about how it might change everything between us. The silence that followed was heavy. Jake could almost feel Sam contemplating the implications. Let's talk this through. I don't want to lose our friendship either. We can figure this out side by side, Sam finally responded, a steadiness in his tone that gave Jake some measure of relief. Their conversation had opened a door, an opportunity for mutual support and understanding. Yet as they made plans for the meeting, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that he was scraping the surface of larger battles hidden within. The air was thick with what lay on the horizon, and Jake knew they were only at the beginning. He glanced out at the fading embers of the sunset, mind racing with strategies and confrontations that still lay ahead. The deeper question nagged at him. When push came to shove, would they be able to transcend their fears together? He could feel the anticipation tightening. A fork in the road was approaching, one that required grappling not just with business, but with the true essence of who they were becoming. The revealing challenges ahead beckoned, and Jake's resolve stiffened. The moment of reckoning was closer than he dared imagine. The next morning, Jake awoke with renewed determination swirling in his mind. The conversation with Sam had cracked open a door he thought had long been bolted shut, and now he felt compelled to march through it. He was aware that their venture was poised on a precipice, teetering between the exhilarating possibilities of success and the daunting spectre of failure. But standing still was no longer an option. Once again at the Cruise Cafe, he found Sam already seated at their usual table, flipping through vendor portfolios that lay scattered before him. There was a fire in Sam's eyes, an electric enthusiasm that Jake couldn't help but admire. But this admiration quickly morphed into self-doubt, gnawing at him as he realized that perhaps he hadn't contributed enough to the creative process. The impulse to prove himself surged within him, urging him into action. "Hey, I was thinking," Jake began, hesitant but resolved, "what if we started looking into the specifics of implementing the cultural themes? We should define exactly what we want each week to express. You have the creative vision. I can help with logistics." Sam looked up, the surprise there quickly replaced by a broad smile. "Exactly. We can align our strengths. Let's break down the weeks. Food, music, art. I've already got some ideas for themes. We could do Italian nights with pasta-making demonstrations, or a Japanese week focusing on sushi preparation." As they talked, Jake diligently took notes, his anxiety slowly yielding to clarity and purpose. He felt an itch to take control, to steer their ideas into a concrete framework. He proposed drafting a timeline for each theme, establishing deadlines for booking artists and vendors, a realistic financial plan to ensure they wouldn't go over budget. The words flowed from him. The more he contributed, the more confidence emerged. We could even engage local schools for student artwork, get them involved. It would be a win-win, community involvement and a fresh gallery for our cafe. Sam's eyes lit up, and he nodded vigorously. However, as excitement bubbled between them, Jake's gnawing fear crept back, and doubt laced his mind. He wondered, would they have the resources? Would they garner enough interest? Why had it taken him so long to find his voice? That evening, Jake sat at his kitchen table with spreadsheets and marketing plans fanned out before him. The glow of the laptop screen contrasted oddly with the darkness of the unlit room around him. He worked meticulously, but underneath it all, an ambient fear whirled. What if their ideas flopped? What if no one showed up? He needed reassurance, a constant reminder that he was not alone in this. Just as the thought settled heavily in his chest, the phone buzzed. It was Sam. "I was thinking," Sam's voice came through, warming the chill in the air. "We should reach out to a small group of friends for feedback. Create a buzz before we launch. Let's build excitement." Hearing this, Jake felt invigorated. He could picture it. Their friends who had dabbled in culinary arts or dived into music as a hobby would both encourage and critique their plans, lending a fresh perspective that might challenge or bolster their ideas. "Let's invite them over this weekend," Jake suggested, feeling a new current flow through the conversation. "It'll be informal just to gauge their reactions and gather input." "Perfect. We can brainstorm together," Sam replied, enthusiasm vibrating in every word. As their plans took shape, an exhilarating spark ignited in Jake. This was exactly what he needed, a sense of collaboration, a support structure that could keep him accountable. Yet the undercurrent of fear still lingered, the suffocating thought that they might fail, or worse, that their friendship might falter under the strain of potential disappointment. That night, as Jake tried to sleep, he couldn't escape the feeling that the weekend gathering wouldn't just be a stepping stone for their business ideas. It would also test the foundations of their friendship. He lay in bed, mind swirling with questions. What if their friends disliked the ideas? What if Sam and Jake disagreed during the session? As he wrestled with these thoughts, he felt a rising urgency within. This was not merely about a business endeavor. It was about confronting their fears head-on, accepting criticism, and finding out how much they truly valued their relationship amidst the chaos. His heart raced. When dawn broke, he knew that the weekend would arrive with more than just a series of discussions. It would be the first step toward a truth they both needed to face. Could they withstand the pressure together? The fateful gathering was just days away, and it was time for Jake to confront the true cost of their dream. The weekend arrived much sooner than Jake anticipated, the air thick with a mix of excitement and dread. He spent Saturday morning tidying his apartment, trying to force order into the chaos building within him. The coffee brewed loudly, steeping in the expectation of friends and ideas colliding in a whirl of enthusiasm and critique. Yet every clink of a cup echoed his doubts, amplifying the questions swirling in his mind. As the afternoon sun dipped into the horizon, the doorbell rang. Each ring sent a tremor through his core. Friends filled his small space, laughter echoing off the walls, yet Jake felt oddly detached. He plastered on a smile, trying to mask the gnawing anxiety twisting his stomach. Amid the mingling and small talk, Jake caught sight of Sam, brimming with optimism, as he animatedly spoke to a group about the proposed themes. Jake admired Sam's charisma, but also felt a pang of insecurity. Amongst this gathering of vibrant personalities, he feared he was just a ghost floating alongside, not an indispensable part of this ideal they were striving to create. "Jake!" Sam called out, interrupting his spiraling thoughts. "Why don't you share some of the ideas you drafted last night?" The sudden spotlight sent a jolt of panic through him. He had been preparing mentally for feedback, not for this direct challenge. Sure," he stammered, his voice barely rising above the chatter. He steadied himself, bringing forth the files he had so meticulously organized. As he spoke, he tried to infuse his ideas with the passion he felt bubbling beneath the surface. Jake attempted to present their ideas clearly, outlining the weekends of culinary exploration and regional music, imbuing each with individual stories. He noticed nods and smiles forming in the audience, encouraging signs he'd been longing for. "Why Japanese sushi?" one friend challenged, eyes narrowed. "It feels too predictable. Everyone does sushi." A chill raced down his spine. Jake wasn't prepared for this. The question hung in the air, suffocating and stagnant. He hesitated, slowly realizing that the air around him throbbed with the tension from his own insecurities about being criticized. He felt cornered, as if the weight of his ambitions sat squarely on his shoulders, threatening to crush him under their own expectations. Just as he was about to falter, something shifted within him. Instead of retreating, he embraced the challenge. Sushi has depth and artistry. It's more than just food. It tells a story of tradition and innovation. If we present it right, we can add our unique spin, or even collaborate with local chefs to bring authenticity. A quiet buzz rippled through the room, an acknowledgement of his passionate defense which emboldened his voice. The doubts retreated, if only for a moment. The conversation shifted to another topic, but Jake felt different. He had stood up for his idea, igniting conversations that flowed like warm currents around him. Every feedback moment felt like a test of his resolve, stripping away his fear and revealing a clearer sense of self. The pressure of judgment had momentarily melted into an opportunity for growth. Later in the evening, as they gathered to discuss their next steps, Jake opened up. "I almost held back," he admitted, looking around at his friends, vulnerability spilling from him like a flood. "But I realized I need your feedback, even if it's hard to hear. This matters to me." As their voices melded into a cacophony of constructive criticism, something significant shifted within. Jake understood that these interactions were more than just about altering plans or ideas. They were forging a deeper connection with his aspirations and friendships. When the night finally drew to a close, Jake felt a strange blend of exhaustion and exhilaration coursing through him. Who would have thought that standing before his friends, pouring out his heart, would transition him so profoundly? As the door closed behind the last guest, Sam turned to him with a look of admiration. "You handled that beautifully, Jake. There's real potential in what we're creating. You'll find your footing. Just keep embracing voices around you, including your own." Jake met Sam's gaze, awareness dawning on him like a sunrise, a realization that this moment was merely the beginning. But just as the sense of triumph began to settle, he sensed an encroaching tide of uncertainty again. What if the next gathering pushed him farther, compelling him to face not just external critiques, but the internal barriers he had yet to break? With a deep breath, clarity sparked within. This journey was still fraught with uncertainty, yet peeking through the fog was the exhilarating promise of growth. He was ready to dive deeper. Next time, it wouldn't just be about business, but unraveling the ties that bound his past to his present, facing shadows he had long avoided. The next chapter awaited, challenging him to delve into the deeper threads of his identity. What truths would emerge as they pushed their ideas forward? It was a rainy Monday morning when Jake found himself staring blankly at his laptop screen, the rhythmic tapping of raindrops on the window becoming a distraction rather than a backdrop for productivity. The weekend's gathering had shifted something inside him, igniting a spark, yet now uncertainty only festered. Doubts crept back in as he contemplated the vastness of what lay ahead. Settling at the kitchen table, he picked up the coffee cup, feeling its warmth seep into his palms. He had written down a list of tasks to tackle, a practical outline to channel the energy developed over the weekend. Each item pointed toward forward motion, yet a heavy weight pressed on his shoulders, anchoring him to a familiar pattern of self-doubt. "Time to dive in," he muttered to himself, forcing focus. Jake opened a document labeled Ideas and Goals and stared at the blank page. The cursor blinked mockingly back at him, a digital metronome pacing out his growing anxiety. He needed clarity, yet his mind was cluttered with what-ifs. What if he failed to impress? What if they rejected his ideas altogether? What if he faced a critique so deep it could unravel every passionate thread he had woven since he began this venture? He took a deep breath, reminding himself of Sam's encouraging words. The past week had shown him the importance of embracing vulnerability. Perhaps it was time to confront the fears gnawing at him and articulate not just his visions, but also his insecurities surrounding them. He began typing, shaping a narrative around his previous ideas. Each sentence flowed more easily than he expected, a rhythmic cascade of thoughts pouring onto the page. The sushi concept transformed as he added more depth, intertwining stories about his childhood experiences while trying different cuisines with family. The more he wrote, the more he discovered connections between who he was and the dreams he harbored. By noon, a more detailed proposal sat before him. It had evolved from a simple outline into a fleshed-out concept, ripe with personality and authenticity. Emboldened by his work, he decided to take a step further. Maybe it was time to face another fear, reaching out to others for input beyond his immediate circle. Could he enlist the opinions of people whose experiences stretched beyond his realm? There was an old friend he had not spoken to in years, someone he had once shared dreams with, but lost touch with during the inevitable shifts of adulthood. What if he could incorporate their insights? Without overthinking it, he pulled out his phone and sent a quick text. "Hey Lisa, it's been a while. I've been working on a project about culinary storytelling and would love your thoughts. Would you be open to meeting up?" His finger hovered over the send button, A quick pulse of apprehension surged through him. What if she didn't respond? What if she judged him for reaching out after all this time? Every doubt flooded back, but he pressed send anyway. 15 minutes later, his phone chimed. A surge of adrenaline coursed through him as he read her enthusiastic reply. "Hey, Jake! I would love to hear more about it. How about Friday?" Relief swept through him, and with it came a newfound determination. Meeting Lisa would provide him with perspectives that could enrich his ideas and potentially steer his journey in a fresh direction. As the week unfolded, Jake pored over his proposal, tweaking and fine-tuning, allowing himself to invest in the feedback he might acquire in their meeting. He even scheduled practice pitches for himself, familiarizing his thoughts, rendering them less foreign. Amid the flourishing ambition, however, shadows lurked. Would discussing these passions unearth more insecurities? What if it brought forth aspects of himself that had long been buried? The looming possibility of confrontation battled with his growing confidence, creating an electric tension within him. Friday came quickly, carrying a mixture of excitement and dread. As he prepared to meet Lisa, he felt the unmistakable pull of unprocessed memories, a flicker of the past weaving through the tangible present. What truths might he unearth in their encounter? And how would confronting this ripple of his history impact not just his ideas, but his identity? The quest for growth was becoming increasingly layered, and Jake stood at the precipice, ready to leap into the unknown. As Jake stepped into the cafe, the familiar scent of roasted coffee beans mingled with the drizzle of rain outside, creating a cozy backdrop that instantly eased some of his tension. The rustic ambience was inviting, yet his heart raced as he scanned the room for Lisa. There she was, sitting at a table in the corner just as he remembered. Her laughter echoed around the cafe, reminiscent of simpler times, and for a moment the chasm of years apart vanished. But alongside that buoyancy came a jab of anxiety. He wasn't the same Jake she had known. Would she see the potential he had unearthed, or only the timid shadow who once hesitated to share his dreams? With a deep breath, he approached her. "Hey, Lisa." He offered a tentative smile, trying to mask his nervousness. "Jake, it's great to see you," she replied, her eyes lighting up in a way that put him slightly at ease. They exchanged pleasantries and settled into the conversation, quickly catching up on the years that had passed. Lisa's stories flowed effortlessly, recounting her various paths, from college adventures to her current job in culinary arts. Each tale painted a vivid picture of resilience and passion, traits he admired deeply. Yet Jake felt a knot tightening in his chest. He had always envisioned a different narrative for himself, one where he was bold, where he pursued his love of culinary storytelling with tenacity. Listening to her, he couldn't help but wonder if he had tucked away too many of his own dreams in the cold recesses of practicality. "What's this project you're working on?" she asked, genuine curiosity flickering in her voice. "You mentioned culinary storytelling." His pulse quickened as he prepared to share his proposal, the words ready to spill forth. But instinctively, he hesitated. Would he crumble under scrutiny? Was he still that frail version of himself who feared failure? "Yeah, Jake stammered. "It's about weaving personal stories into cuisine. I think food has the power to connect us across experiences." Her eyes studied him, intrigued. "That sounds amazing. What's your angle?" Jake's throat tightened. This was it, the moment that could reshape his trajectory. The vulnerable part of him wanted to splatter every insecurity along with his ambitions. "Sometimes I worry I don't have the right experiences or connections to make it work. What if nobody cares about the stories I want to tell?" Lisa leaned forward, her expression serious yet kind. "But aren't those the very stories that could resonate? You're unique, Jake. Lean into that." Her words struck a chord deeper than he anticipated, but just as he began to feel a flutter of possibility, the waiter arrived with their orders. The interruption offered a moment for Jake to collect his thoughts. As he sipped the rich brew, he noticed Lisa scanning the cafe. Just then, a couple walked in, completely absorbed in their world, oblivious to the canvas of lives surrounding them. Their laughter seemed so far from his current struggles, socio-economic differences that had unfolded since his ascent in life. Why had he cared so much about status? He had nearly forgotten what it felt like to be part of the everyday dance of life. Lisa's vibrant energy sparked a realization. Authenticity was rooted in vulnerability. "Can I pitch my proposal to you?" he asked suddenly, the boldness surprising him. "I really value your perspective." "Of course, I'd love to help." Her encouragement lifted his spirit like sunlight breaking through clouds. As he articulated his proposal, Jake felt a shift within. With each idea shared, pieces of his identity reassembled. The nervous flutter turned into excitement, something he hadn't felt in years. No longer shackled by the weight of expectations, he began to view his dreams as gateways rather than burdens. Yet as he spoke of his childhood memories tied to food, an unexplored fear lurked beneath. What if articulating these truths led him to confront aspects of his past he long ignored? Could he truly embrace all he had been while striving for who he wanted to become? Lisa's thoughtful nods provided a comforting rhythm, fueling his confidence. But as he hit a crescendo in his pitch, a stark realization settled over him like a mist. This meeting wasn't simply about sharing ideas, it was an invitation to rediscover himself. What aspect of his past would Jake dare confront next, and how would it shape his vision for the future? The layers of his journey began to peel away, coaxing forth revelations he wasn't yet prepared to face. Jake paced himself as he continued to share his proposal, each word an exploration of uncharted territory for him. The nervousness slowly faded, replaced by an urgency to connect his past with the present. He recalled how his mother had crafted meals that told stories about their heritage, recipes passed down like cherished secrets. The act of cooking had once been sacred, a celebration of culture and memory, but over time, practicality had reduced it to mere sustenance. "Food is so much more than just taste," Jake said with newfound conviction, his voice gaining volume. "It's about nostalgia, connection, even healing. Each dish can evoke memories, weave together disparate life experiences." As he spoke, he felt the weight of expectations lift. Each idea felt less like a burden and more like a gift. He could see the spark of acknowledgement in Lisa's eyes. "What if you started with your own story?" she suggested, leaning in, her tone encouraging as if they both stood on the precipice of discovery. "What shaped you? What fears or joys do you associate with food?" His heart raced. Could he be that vulnerable? The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. Jake realized that the fear of inadequacy had long overshadowed his capacity for authenticity. What if it was the very act of revealing his struggles that would resonate the most? He nodded slowly, though uncertainty lingered in his mind. "I'd have to dig deep," he admitted, his voice quiet. "There are parts of my childhood that they're not easy to confront." Lisa smiled gently, an understanding glimmering in her gaze. "That's where the real connection lies, Jake. We're all shaped by our pasts. We invest our hearts in the things that matter, and it's in that authenticity that others will find their own stories mirrored." The truth of her words lingered, yet he couldn't shake the feeling of apprehension. Would the revelations be too raw, too personal? Could he bear to expose the vulnerabilities that defined him, but also haunted him? "Listen," she said, interrupting his spiral of thoughts. "The people who have the capacity to critique you might not resonate with the emotional core of your story, but those who will connect with it will be so much more meaningful. Focusing on the right audience could be your strength." Her encouragement forced him to confront the reality that he had been trapped in a cycle, seeking validation in external approval rather than integrating and celebrating his own narrative. "Okay," he said firmly, recognizing a newfound resolve. "I can start with my family's recipes, the ones that have shaped who I am, tied to my memories of our gatherings, and then transition into how it interplays with my journey, my shift into corporate life, and the disconnect that followed." As they continued discussing ideas, a connection flowed between them. Articulating his thoughts, Jake found he was also dismantling the walls he had built. The cafe, once a mere background to their conversation, transformed into a sanctuary of possibility. Her unwavering support shone like a beacon, guiding him through murky waters. Yet beneath the excitement of this burgeoning project was a deeper journey awaiting him, a confrontation with the remnants of his past he had kept at bay. When they finally concluded their conversation, Lisa's enthusiasm was palpable. "I mean this, Jake. Your story matters. Own it. Embrace every part of it." Jake left the cafe that day with a tingle of purpose, yet the thrill was laced with apprehension. He was ready to delve into his past, but what skeletons would he unearth? Each step forward brought its own set of challenges, and the memories he would soon explore filled him with both dread and anticipation. How would his rekindled passion shape the next phase of his life, and what shadows would he need to confront in this journey? The path ahead was unclear, and as he stepped out into the widening world, the air crackled with uncertainty, an invitation to face the realities he had long evaded. Would he rise or fall once he embraced the honesty of his narrative? Days turned into weeks, and Jake found himself deeply entrenched in the project, navigating uncharted territories of his past while shaping the restaurant concept into a tangible reality. This journey was about rediscovery of the joy he had once found in cooking, the stories he'd stifled, and the relationships that had drifted through the complexities of adult life. The idea that had begun as a mere flicker now blazed with intensity. He meticulously crafted narratives, recalling family gatherings where laughter intertwined with the aroma of richly spiced dishes. Each story and recipe became not just a reflection of his heritage, but a pathway to healing, bridging the gap between who he once was and who he aspired to be. Sam, too, had found renewed purpose. Over the weeks, he channeled his culinary passion into developing innovative menus that intertwined with Jake's storytelling. Their partnership flourished as they held brainstorming sessions filled with excitement and camaraderie. Together they formulated a plan that emphasized local ingredients, cultural heritage, and community involvement, a blend that distinguished their venture from others. However, as Jake delved deeper into his tales, he confronted personal demons that haunted his memories of insecurity, of struggling to fit into a world of wealth while his roots anchored him elsewhere. The fear of judgment crept in, but with each story he unpacked, he discovered a profound strength beneath the layers of self-doubt. His breakthrough moment arrived unexpectedly. During a late-night brainstorming session, while working through the stories that had for so long remained buried, Jake voiced a pivotal realization. The connection with food isn't just about the dishes we create, he articulated to Sam. It's about the reflections of who we are, the scars and triumphs that go into crafting those dishes. If we weave that authenticity into our restaurant, we not only honor our pasts, but we also invite our patrons to embrace their own connections. With renewed confidence, Jake embraced the challenge of overseeing the restaurant's launch. The excitement was palpable as they secured pop-up spaces, and the community began circling around their concept, driven by word of mouth and the genuine energy emanating from their work. Finally, the day approached when they would unveil their first tasting event to a small, hand-picked audience. Jake stood at the back of the venue, the hum of chatter filling the air, heart racing as he watched patrons savor each dish, witnessed their reactions to the stories intertwined with every bite. As he made his way through the crowd, catching snippets of conversation that began to reflect what he had hoped for, a connection, an understanding. He felt the realization of his achievement wash over him. They hadn't just created a restaurant, they had forged a community around shared experiences and emotional ties to food. At that moment, amidst the laughter and compliments, Jake understood that he had not only conquered his insecurities, but had also embraced his identity. The once timid man who feared vulnerability had morphed into a confident storyteller, someone capable of blending personal history with culinary passion. As the evening drew to a close and the applause echoed through the venue, Sam turned to him with an approving smile. "You've really done it, Jake. This is just the beginning." Jake nodded, swelling with pride, not just for the success of the event, but for the profound personal transformation he had achieved. They had sparked a dialogue about culture, heritage, and identity, all woven through the art of cooking. The journey had awakened passions long dormant, and what started as a dream to recreate a childhood love morphed into a purpose-driven endeavor that transcended business. Jake realized he had gained more than just recognition in the culinary world. He reclaimed the essence of himself and deepened the bonds of his friendship with Sam. With an established foothold and plans to expand, he ventured outside into the cool night, refreshed and illuminated by the journey ahead, a journey he had embarked upon not with the expectation of external validation, but with a genuine commitment to his story and the stories of others woven through the magic of food. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending, as your feedback means the world to us. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to spread this inspiring story.